Sahana bhavatu Sahanau gunattu Sahaviryam karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
These voices echo from a remote past, maybe 5,000 years, perhaps much more. With unbroken continuity, the Indian civilization is without dispute 5,000 years old, debatably even a few thousand years older. If cities of the Indus Valley 3,000 years before Christ had organized roads, public buildings, rudimentary merchant establishments, weights and measures, they also had maritime commerce. Their own creative arts have an uncanny relationship to the present. The Vedic chants are the oldest extant religious expressions of mankind. This Vedic school on the banks of the Kaveri River is about 500 years old, with over 200 students learning the recitation today to graduate as Vedic scholars at the dawn of the 21st century, to continue to sing the song of humanity in its immortal ascension, exploring timeless wonders of the universe. The quintessence of the Vedas are contained in a later day text, the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna's sermon at the battlefront, composed about 3,000 years ago. As a chapter of Mahabharata, the longest poem in the world, the Bhagavad Gita is considered to be the core of modern Hinduism. M.S. Subbulakshmi, described by Jawaharlal Nehru as the Queen of Indian music, sings Mahatma Gandhi's favorite song in praise of Lord Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna implores man to be active and perform his duty without attachments to the fruits of such action. The joy is in the performance, not in the mere applause that follows.
द्रौपदी के लाज राखी तुम बढ़ायो जी हरि तुम्हारो जन के भक्त कारण रूप नर हरि धर्यो आप शरीर भक्त कारण रूप नर हरि धर्यो आप शरीर हरि न कश्यप मारली हो हरि न कश्यप मारली हो धर्यो नाहिन हे हरि तुम्हारो जन के भेद
If Ram and Sita, the divine couple of the epic Ramayana, became role models, and if Krishna was at once cowherd as well as royal monarch, another prince of the subcontinent renounced the comforts of royalty to search for the eternal truth, performing penance under a peepal tree. The whole world celebrates the Enlightenment at the very place where Prince Gautam became the Buddha, by having temples and monasteries of diverse architecture. Although as a religion, Buddhism spread to the rest of Asia and is followed only by a minority in India, Buddha's thoughts vibrate through Indian life, and the Buddha is worshipped in India as another incarnation of the same God as Ram and Krishna. An esoteric contemporary of the Buddha, Mahavir, founder of the Jain religion, has left an indelible footprint on civilization. If Jain epistemology leaves us struck with wonder for presenting an uncanny foreknowledge of the theory of relativity, Jain ethics makes non-violence the springboard of universal brotherhood. Indeed, Mahatma Gandhi was inspired by these principles in his struggle against the military might of a colonial empire. In political terms, the first Indian empire in recorded history was the Kingdom of Magadha. Even as this was expanding its territory, an east-west meet was taking place in northwest India. Emperor Alexander of Macedonia conquered the Middle East countries and attacked India. Although the invasion was successfully repulsed and Alexander never ruled India, an east-west assimilation began, as reflected by the Gandhara school of sculpture, which flourished in India for a few centuries before Christ. The Mauryan dynasty came to power, establishing a pan-Indian empire under the able guidance of Minister Chanakya, who authored one of the first books of political science in the world, nearly 400 years before Christ. The Mauryan dynasty produced a monarch of whom India is eternally proud, Emperor Ashoka. This stupa in Sanchi dates back to Ashoka's reign about 300 years before Christ. In the course of the expansion of his empire, Ashoka realized the horrors, the cruelty, and the futility of war. He became a devout follower of the Buddha and took upon himself the task of spreading the message of peace and harmony as the Buddha's message to humanity. Buddhism spread all over Asia. The Chora kings of Tamil Nadu developed large-scale irrigation systems, building a dam across River Kaveri 100 years after Christ, which is functioning today after periodic renovations. The Gupta dynasty, which ruled large areas of North India from the 4th century after Christ, paid unprecedented attention to education on a vast scale. Nalanda was a vibrant academic center for nearly 1,000 years, with over 10,000 students, supported from royal grants at its peak. Nalanda taught mathematics and medicine, metallurgy, astronomy, and theology. This iron pillar of Delhi, cast about 1,500 years ago, is of a size and weight that could not have been produced anywhere else in the world until the 19th century. During the 5th century, Indian astronomer Aryabhatta recognized the world to be spherical and declared it revolved around its axis, while Indian mathematicians invented the zero, gave place value for numbers, and developed the decimal system of calculation. At Mamallapuram on the east coast, a 7th century lighthouse stands testimony to sea trade relations with China and Rome. This ancient port city has rock-cut bas-relief sculptures and monolithic rock temples. These monolithic rock temples paved the way to construct temples built on a gigantic scale. 4 of the greatest temples of India were built by different rulers in different parts of India in the 11th century. Of these, the Jain temples of Palitana in the west now constitute the single most expansive temple complex of the world. The oldest of these was built in the 11th century. The other 3 are Hindu temples of the 11th century dedicated to Lord Shiva. The Lingaraja temple of Bhubaneswar in the east is a great contribution of the Orissa style of architecture. The Kandariya Mahadev temple in north-central India is the nucleus of the world-renowned Khajuraho group of temples, known for its sculptures as well as architecture. The oldest of these 11th century temples is the Brihadishwara temple at Tanjavur in South India, where Shiva is being worshipped 3 times a day, every day of the year, for the last almost 1,000 years without a break, according to the ancient tradition of the Vedas. The Cholas, who built the Tanjavur temple, made bronze icons, considered to be among the greatest masterpieces of art in man's heritage. The bronzes depict a varied pantheon of Hindu gods and goddesses. While God Shiva and his consort Parvati are worshipped as the primordial lovers, as the father and mother of all creation, as matter and energy, as cause and effect, Shiva is also worshipped as the cosmic dancer, Nataraja. The most known of the Chola bronzes is Nataraja, and the temple at Chidambaram is dedicated to this Lord of Dance. What is the significance of this civilization conceiving the absolute reality as a dancer? Once a poem is written, it becomes independent of the poet. The painting acquires an identity exclusive of the painter. The sculpture is indeed different from the sculptor. But the dancer and the dance are indivisible. The creation and the creator are one and the same. That is the dance of Shiva.
Jata kataga sambhrama brahman nilimpa nirjhari Vilola vichi vallari virajamana murdhani Jata kataga sambhrama brahman nilimpa nirjhari Vilola vichi vallari virajamana murdhani Dhagad 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 jwalallalata patta pavake Kishora Chandrasekhare rati pratikshanam mama Jata bhujanga pingala puratpana maniprabha Kadamba kunkuma drava pralipta dikvadumukhe Dhimit 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 dhvanin mrudanga tunga mangala Dhvanikrama pravartita prachanda tandava shiva Trunaravinda chakshusho prajamaji mahendrayo Samam pravartayan manakada sada sivam bhaje Kada sada sivam bhaje Kada sada sivam bhaje
If the ocean waves and the stars above perform the dance of Shiva, so do the stars and planets of the galaxies. Modern physics has revealed that subatomic particles are actually dynamic patterns which do not exist as isolated entities, but as integral parts of an inseparable network of interactions. This dynamic interplay by a ceaseless flow of energy give rise to stable structures building up the material world, which again oscillate in rhythmic movement. The whole universe is thus engaged in a continual cosmic dance of energy. The metaphor of the dance of Shiva is thus a unifying factor of ancient wisdom, many art forms, and modern physics. In the words of Ananda Kumaraswamy, the dance of Shiva is poetry, but nonetheless science too. Talking about subatomic particles, Robert Oppenheimer says, if we ask whether the position of the electron remains the same, we must say no. If we ask whether the electron's position changes with time, we must say no. If we ask whether the electron is at rest, we must say no. If we ask whether the electron is in motion, we must say no. Doesn't the reality of today's atomic physicist strikingly resemble the perception of reality of the Hindu Upanishad written a few millennia ago? The Upanishad says, it moves not. It is far and it is near. It is within all this and it is outside of all this.
Recognizing divinity in all creation, since God manifests himself through every living and non-living entity, the ancient Hindu seers respected all creation. The Taittiriya Samhita defines punya, or positive action, as any action that sustains the balance of nature, such as favoring a river in its direction of flow. The Upanishad defines papa, or sin, as upsetting the balance of nature. The rivers are worshipped in the Vedic hymn. Taittiriya Upanishad prohibits the pollution of rivers by human indiscretion. Recognizing the importance of forests and trees, another rishi exalts the virtue of a tree by saluting it as divinity personified. Mulato Brahmarupaya, Madhyato Vishnurupaya, Agrataha Shivarupaya, Vriksharajaya Te Namaha. The ancient seers had abundant love for animals, birds, trees, rivers, and mountains, recognizing the whole cosmos as but part of Leela, or God's play. This was not born out of man's self-interest to protect his environment in order to sustain his own species, but out of innate love for all of God's creation. When modern man wants to return to nature, Indian thought gives him an inspiration from out of experience of time immemorial. The Vedic concept of the creation and the creator being one and the same was re-emphasized by the saint Shankaracharya, who left an indelible mark on history. Born in Kaladi village in South India, Shankara traveled extensively all over India and brought together various branches of Hinduism under one umbrella. Different historians have ascribed various dates to Shankaracharya, ranging from about 500 BC to 700 AD. Shankara established a few seats of authority to carry on his tradition. The birth centenary celebrations of one such Shankaracharya, His Holiness Chandrasekharendra Saraswati, spiritual head of a centuries-old seat of enlightenment in 1993, symbolized India's unbroken connectivity to her primordial wisdom. Not long ago, this sage of Kanchi composed a benediction to mankind for M.S. Subbalakshmi to sing at the United Nations in a special concert.
Sakala Janana